Welcome to Diasporaa, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta. Each week, we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their challenges, and their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today, we're joined by Shruti Khuntia. She's originally from a city called Cuttack in the state of Odisha and has subsequently lived in 15 cities around the world, all the way to her journey in Vancouver now. She's an engineer and an MBA and has been in sales for most of her career. And currently she's director of sales at Expedia Group. I know Shruti from Vancouver through the immigrants platform I used to run, also called Diasporaa. We'll go into that a little bit later. And with that, let's dive into this week's conversation. So Shruti, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you.
Thanks for making the drive over. How's the border crossing these days?
It was surprisingly empty, but also unsurprisingly empty, I guess. I think obviously everyone knows about the recent tensions between US and Canada. And I think we're definitely seeing that pan out, especially as we cross borders. I've crossed the border a couple of times now in the last 1 month.
Yeah.
And usually on a Saturday morning, for example, the border would be
very crowded.
Really choked. Yeah, it would be at least 100 cars waiting in line, and it would be like a 35-40 minute wait.
Yeah.
I'm one of the lucky ones. I have Nexus, so I've never had an issue, but there were definitely fewer cars there this time.
I've been waiting for an interview for a year now for Nexus. So I figured with less people traveling, there might be more appointments, but at least doesn't seem to be the case. So you were born in Odisha as a Bombay person, which is very far from Odisha. And as a Bombay person who usually we are in our own little bubble, tell us a bit about Odisha. What are the people like? What part of the country is it in? And just whatever you want to share about the state.
I'm going to have to do my best here because I know you introduced me as being from Cuttack, Odisha. And while that might technically be true because I was born there, I actually have never lived in Odisha.
Sure.
I was born there and my parents were already, they had moved out of Odisha by then. I think my mom just moved back temporarily to have me there because it was a convenient place with her parents to support. But we used to go every year to visit my grandparents. I think that was really good on my parents' part. I'll describe a little bit about how my parents raised me. So, like you said, I've grown up in 15 different cities across the world.
Yeah.
And in extremely different geographies, right? Different cultures and all of that. But I really appreciate and admired my parents for making sure that there was consistency at home in the way we were brought up, which is we were brought up like Odia kids.
Okay.
They insisted that we speak in Odia at home. And so actually a lot of people are very pleasantly surprised when they meet me from Odisha because I speak fluent Odia, often even better than what an Odia person from Odisha would speak.
Wow.
And then also the consistency of going back home and visiting family.
Sure.
You know, we would always go to Bhubaneswar, which is where my mom's parents were there, and then my dad's mom, because his father passed away when he was younger. He comes from a village which is closer to Jagat Singhpur, which is near Paradeep Port.
Okay.
We always made sure to visit. And so we know, like locally, the foods and the culture and the festivals. And I think I really appreciated that. So Odia people in general, I would say, like really like non-problematic people, easygoing, not like, they're not loud and out there, like as in obviously there are other states that are more well-known in India. Odia people are a bit more mellow. They kind of blend into the background, sort of, like, but in a good way, like very easygoing people, I would say.
So since you're fluent with the language, in my part of the country, especially from Gujarat to Kutch to Sindh to Punjab, the languages kind of flow one into each other. Is Oriya like very standalone in that sense, or is there some cross connection with, say, Bengali or any other neighboring states?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. No, it is quite similar to Bengali.
Okay.
A lot of our words, like the root words, I guess, it's obviously derived from Sanskrit. And so the mool shabds, as we call them, they're quite similar. Yeah. So I will understand Bengali contextually. I might not understand every single word, but if a Bengali person is speaking, I'll understand. And I think it has quite a lot of similarities to Assamese as well.
Sure.
And also to Sanskrit, of course, because it's derived from there.
And is the script similar to Bengali as well?
No, actually, it has its own script. So my grandma, fortunately, taught me a few letters here and there. So extremely slowly, I can read a little bit of Odia.
Like my Gujarati.
Also. Oh, yeah. Well, we're in the same boat then.
Yeah, I studied Gujarati in school for 3 years, but I never got fluent in reading it. And anyways, in Bombay, we speak, 3 languages in one sentence. It's pretty common.
Yes.
So once there was a very famous Gujarati magazine called Chitralekha. It's worldwide, Gujaratis read it. So I was featured in an article, but it took me like 2 days to read my own article because I was so slow in reading it. So the only thing I know about Cuttack is that there's an international cricket stadium there. And my listeners know that a lot of anchors for me are based on where cricket matches were played. But that's good to know. I learned something new today. Actually, the other thing I knew is that there is a very large Oriya community in Surat. There's 500,000 people there, and they all work in the diamond polishing industry. And it's always touted as, how in India there tends to be like this anti-outsider thing. Like in Maharashtra, it's like, oh, people from North India are taking all our jobs, right? But this is a great example of coexistence where they're good citizens and they're welcome there. And so it's always something that has intrigued me that in Gujarat, outsiders tend to be more welcome because I think Gujaratis are more pragmatic that way. Like these are people coming and doing the jobs that we are not equipped to do or we don't want to do. So why not let them do that?
That's a pretty mature way of thinking. And I didn't know that there were so many Odiyas in Surat. So every day you learn something new.
I was in some random hotel. I'd stayed there in Surat, just breakfast. And all the staff it was what I then found out was Oriya music playing. I thought this sounds like Bengali, but it's not Bengali. And then I asked someone, what is this playing? And he said, oh, this is Oriya music. It's like, all the staff is from there. And I said,
oh, that's fantastic.
Like, that's so random that one hotel has all the staff. Because, sure, like one person comes from one place, they bring their relatives. It's like, no, all of Surat, you'll find a lot of Oriya. So that's how I learned.
So another interesting thing about Oriya is that recently, like I've seen is, so Bangalore obviously being an IT hub.
Yeah.
Has a lot of bachelors and, people that are busy in their jobs. They don't have the time to cook. Apparently, like most of the cook network in Bangalore is Odiyas. We apparently cook very well.
Is there a term for the cooks who come from there?
Term as in like, what are the cooks called in Odiya?
No, so in Bombay, a lot of the cooks, they're male and they come from around Udaipur.
Oh, I
and
see.
They're Rajasthani, but they speak Gujarati and they're called Maharaj.
Oh, okay. Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about Bangalore, I always ask my guests to give some context to our listeners here that if Bangalore were an American city, what would it be? And you're the first one from Bangalore, so you get to answer that question.
I'm actually surprised I'm the first one from Bangalore. I feel like so many Bangaloreans make that way outside. That's an easy one. Bangalore is actually nicknamed as the Silicon Valley of India, which equates it to San Francisco because of the tech presence, I guess.
What years were you there?
Oh, I was there several times actually. So I think the first time we moved into Bangalore, I don't know my exact age, but I must have been 1. And then the second time we moved in there, I was 10 and then lived there until I went to college, which must have been 17. So
you must have seen the transformation that the city went through.
Oh yeah, right? I did. I was there for the entire part.
Do you think it's mostly been a good transformation or it's brought its set of problems with it too?
Both. I think like any city, when it evolves from where it is to where it goes.
It used to be a sleepy retirement/college town.
Yes, exactly. It used to be, well, I don't know if it's still called the Garden City, but it was called the Garden City for a reason because it was really green. The streets were kind of like, it was a quaint little city, like
now
in
the third largest in the country.
It's huge. It's just exploded. And the thing is, I don't think Bangalore was built to become as big and busy as it has turned into now. So, well, the good side I would say is obviously like the tech hubs now in Bangalore.
Yeah.
And I think like the tech hub is now expanding beyond Bangalore. It's like Pune Pune also has become saturated and Hyderabad and so on. But the city is bursting at its seams, I think. At least that's the feeling we started getting towards the end of our stay and it's only gotten busier.
I was in Jayanagar once, which is in the south of the city and my flight was at 8 p.m. So my branch manager is like, yeah, you should leave around 3 p.m. so that you... And I was like, what? So I'm not driving to Bombay. He's like, no, the airport's going to take 2.5, 3 hours to get there. Yeah,
exactly. So. But yeah, I mean, like the good part would be, obviously there's a lot of like modernization that's happened and it's a nice city if you want to do like different things. There's so many activities and like the pubs and restaurants and it's truly become very global. Like I don't think you will have any dearth of cuisine or experiences and so on. But the downside is like traffic and the pollution. And I want to talk about the seasons as well. Like I think like when we were growing up, when we were younger back in school, we didn't really feel the 4 seasons in Bangalore so prominently. It was like cloudy. I equated to Seattle. It was a little bit cloudy and chilly and the wind would blow. And when the wind would blow, it would howl. Like it was amazing. I will never forget that howling wind sound that we used to hear. And now you need air conditioning in homes, which we didn't even have fans when we were growing up. So it's changed a lot in those ways. Good and bad, I guess. I guess you feel the 4 seasons, but it's hot as well.
Yeah, Bombay gets hotter and colder every year. The winter is a little colder. I'm not going to debate about global warming, but climate change is definitely
It's so real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what other cities have you lived in India and around the world up to the point where you finished your education?
So, like we were talking, I was born in Cuttack, but that was just me being born there. And then we moved to a lot of smaller cities and towns across Karnataka because my dad was a civil servant. And so we moved across multiple, like towns and cities like Gulbarga, Bellary, Mangalore. And then we ended up in Bangalore for some time, but I was really young. And then I think my first real memory begins when we moved to New Delhi, which was when I was in first standard.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of years, my dad actually decided to do his master's from London School of Economics. He moved to London and then we followed him. That was a great experience. I think that was quite defining for me in my childhood because it was so diverse from every other city that I had lived in India.
Yeah.
So we lived there for a year until he finished his master's, came back to Delhi again, back to the same school, same neighborhood. And then when I was in fifth standard, we moved back to Bangalore. And then I think by then my parents wanted to give me some stability in terms of, because I'd already changed like 7, 8 schools, I think. So I finished my middle school and my high school in Bangalore. And then as soon as I graduated, my parents actually moved back to New Delhi because my brother was still young. So it was okay to move then. And I went off to college. So actually I moved out of home and I haven't been back to live with my parents since after 12th standard.
So New Delhi and Bangalore are very different vibes.
Very.
Is there one that you like more than the other?
That's a really hard question. I think in all the cities that I have lived in, there was one city I didn't like living in, and I'm not going to say which one that was. But every city, I think I have learned to appreciate different aspects of it. So Bangalore, I think I really liked because the music scene, the pub scene, I mean, this was obviously when I was much older. I loved it. Like, back when we were in our, like late teens and early 20s, there was this Purple Haze Cafe. And, I think Hard Rock Cafe, I don't know if they still exist. They've probably shut down by now.
Yeah.
But, I loved that scene. It was just such a chill atmosphere. And then New Delhi is really good for the food.
Sure.
So we would, like that whole, is it the House Khas area? I'm probably forgetting those neighborhoods now.
Yeah, that's the area with all the restaurants.
All the nice restaurants. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And then I remember we used to live pretty close to, what's it called? The Chanakya cinema. And one of my early happy memories is because my aunts actually used to work and go to college in New Delhi. So I would tag along with them and there were these little momo shops in Chanakya theater and we would just go and sit and hog plates of momos and I loved it. And I think my love for momos, I mean, you can already see me blushing here. It's my absolute favorite food.
Yeah.
I still love it till date, but it was just, I have happy memories from every city that I've lived in. So it's really hard to rank cities. My absolute favorite city that I lived in, I think, was Mumbai.
Yeah.
But I have happy memories from every city that I've lived in.
Not surprised being from Bombay.
You are from Mumbai. Yes.
Bombay people have a thing where Bombay and Delhi don't like each other. And it's always initiated by the Bombay people. Like, we're better than Delhi.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it would be the other way around.
No, I think Bombay is much more competitive as a city. And everybody's always rushing somewhere. But I always remember in college, it was always the Bombay folks who would start talking smack to the Delhi folks. So
I find that hilarious.
Yeah. What brought you to Bombay?
So Bombay happened when I decided to do my MBA. So I got into SP Gen and that was in Andheri West. So that was a good part of Bombay to land in actually. Because smack in the middle of the city, you get the best experience. So that was 2010, I want to say. And I'd already worked for 1 year post my undergrad. So 2010 to 12, I did my B school. So I did my MBA majoring in finance. And then 2012, I started working at Citibank, and that was in Bandra Kurla complex. So I spent another 3 years there. So total of 5 years.
So what did Bombay have that made it your favorite city?
I have to be completely honest. When I landed in Bombay, I hated it. Okay,
yeah,
because it was just
sounds about right.
It was hot. It was smelly. Yeah. It was just the traffic was I'd never seen traffic like that in my life.
Yeah, but I think Bangalore traffic now
it's beaten Bombay. I think because we don't even have good public transit. But I think the city, it's just incredible. I mean, I'll probably tell you through an anecdote. I was really sick and I couldn't get out of bed. This was B school. People were busy, like there were classes and exams and whatnot. And I couldn't get out of bed and I really needed medication. And I remember calling this like pharmaceutical shop in the middle of the night. And I'm like, Bhaiya, like, Bhaiya is basically like, brother, can you, I don't know, like I can't get to you and I really need this antibiotic. Can you do something? And he says, oh, don't worry about it. Like I'll send my guy and he'll drop it off at your place. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. Expected to be a delivery fee, nothing. He just I think like what I'm trying to say is the people are incredible. Like Bombay is such a great melting pot for different people from different states.
Yeah. And it's been like that for a very long time.
Yeah.
So it's used to that.
It's used to that, yeah. And it's just everyone comes together and there's this like strong sense of community and helping each other out.
Yeah.
And so you feel safe, you feel secure, you feel taken care of. Like if God forbid something happens to you while you're walking down the street, there will be 10 people that will come up to you and help you up and make sure you get home safe. I remember like I was in my mid-20s. I was living in Bombay, peak of my party days, I guess. And I remember we would go out, like partying with our friends and middle of the night, I would not feel safe taking a taxi back home in any other city.
Yeah.
But in Bombay, you could get into the taxi and they would get you home safe and sound. So
I've heard that many times before.
Yeah. I'm just hoping my parents are not listening to this podcast. But
on that note, let's take a short break. And when we return, we'll talk about your move to this part of the world and how your career panned out. So we'll be right back after these messages.
When I smoke weed, I get lost in the music. I like to isolate each instrument. The rhythmic bass, the harmonies on the piano, the sticky melody.
Hey, careful, babe. There's someone crossing the street.
Sorry, I didn't see him there.
If you feel different, you drive different. Don't drive high. It's dangerous and illegal everywhere. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diasporaa, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diasporaa offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diasporaa Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Ready to shake things up? Try Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Diasporaa on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. We're talking to Shruti Khuntia, my friend and a senior sales professional. So I want to spend some time talking about your sales career. I've also been in sales most of my life, with the exception of the time I was at Amazon. And then I realized how much I missed sales. Mine was, very, hardcore field sales. I was part of a team that was selling financial products door to door sometimes in India. And one thing I noticed was the percentage of women was next to zero. This is the mid 2000s. And then obviously as a result of that, very few women leaders in sales. So 3-part question. 1, what got you interested in sales to begin with? 2, did you have a similar experience of having very few women peers? And 3, did you face any challenges in your growth because of being a woman in sales?
Yeah. So my career in sales, I think, kind of stemmed from this amazing opportunity that we were given at Citibank when we were placed right out of B school, because like I was saying, I majored in finance at B school.
Yeah.
And then at Citibank, we were part of this management associate program, which was like fresh out of B school. They rotate you through three different divisions. And I had the good fortune of working in operations and product and then in sales as well. So across 2 years, we were doing like 6-month stints each. And I think that was amazing because it gives you a little bit of a flavor of the different functions and domains across multinational corporation. And then at the end of it, they let you decide where you want to go.
Right.
And sales for me, I think, was the most interesting because I'm definitely not built for a 100% desk job. I really like interacting with people. I've always liked talking to people. And I think I get that from my mom. She's an extremely social person. And so I liked that combination of a desk job. Obviously, there's a desk job element to a sales role as well. and speaking to people outside the company, because it gives you the different perspective of like what's happening outside with a different company as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how my sales career started. I have worked in different industries as I've grown in my career. So it started off with financial services, and then I moved to technology, and now I'm in travel. So yeah, I think what's stayed consistent is the sales aspect of it. I have done
Sure.
different flavors of sale, but it's just something that I think I will continue to do if I were
Yeah.
given a choice, unless something changes in the future, who knows?
And were there a lot of women peers that you had in sales, or were you usually one of, like engineering, very
Yeah.
male dominated?
Yeah. So I am actually an engineer by education, and I know all about how it can be male dominated often. I would say like the beginning of my career, which was more hardcore sales like you were describing,
Yeah.
because I was in business development actually. That was more male dominated, I would say. I don't know if it was intended to be like that, and this was one of the challenges I faced actually in my early years at sales, which is I was taking care of the Mumbai region, like along with a set of my colleagues. And I quickly realized that we were selling to basically small and medium enterprises. So these were a lot of like businessmen that were local to that
Yeah.
region. So like a lot of Gujaratis and Maharashtrians, mainly Gujaratis, I would say. So I saw colleagues, like I saw my colleagues, both male and female. The minority was female, of course. But the ones that spoke Gujarati were doing better
Sure.
because obviously there's this like camaraderie piece to it. You strike up a better rapport with people and you're
Yeah.
able to convert better. So it definitely didn't help. And also a lot of them were male business
Sure.
people. So it was difficult for sure. And I could see why, like naturally the business was leaning towards hiring people that would convert better and be
Yeah.
more successful. I think that was just the nature of how the job ended up being,
Yeah.
rather than the company actually like actively trying to hire male professionals. But I would say my current job, Expedia, is actually very female heavy, which is one of the things I love about the company. And actually, like in my team, my broader sales team as well, we're more women than men. And I love that because very often you'll see we're in a room and, like we're talking to our partner companies and there'll be like good mix of men and women on the other side. And on our side, it was just like all women, my
Yeah.
boss, me, the lady that reports into me. So it's pretty incredible. It's a good feeling. And you definitely like that feeling of being a minority has definitely gone away. Not that I ever felt it too strongly,
Sure.
but it's definitely like not there right now.
So
Yeah.
by virtue of having more females in the team, it I think also makes it more accessible to be in leadership and makes it I'm not going to say easier because you still have to work hard and it's a merit based society, but does that help in how your chances of getting promoted are, or assuming you're doing a good job?
Yeah, no, I've not seen that for sure. At least in my current company, I see that it's merit based, and I've generally seen women also getting promoted when they're ready and they're qualified.
Sure.
And things like that. So I appreciate that about where I work right now.
Yeah.
And I feel fortunate because I know not everyone has that kind of experience. So
Yeah.
and honestly, I've spent so many years in the company because I do truly believe that the company promotes merit based.
Yeah. I mean,
progress.
Expedia being a travel website, could you tell our listeners a bit more about what sales entails in that setting for your team, or
Yeah.
just a broad overview? Don't need to go into very company specific details, but
Yeah, for sure. So I work in account management. So we basically take care of, and I work in account management in the car rental division. So all the car rental companies that you see, or where like any car rental company that you would rent a car
Yeah.
from, we basically manage the corporate relationships as well as the regional, local relationships with those
Got it.
partners.
so you're servicing the providers of the cars, not the people booking the cars, because that's
Absolutely,
a B2C
yeah.
side
It's
of
more,
the business.
yeah, exactly, yeah. It's the business partnerships that my team looks at.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how long have you been at Expedia?
It's going to be, well, it's almost 6.5 years now. It's
Okay.
going to be 7 years later this year.
The office building where my Amazon office was in Bellevue, I think it used to be the Expedia Tower.
Oh, are you in? Okay.
Now it's called Bingo.
Oh,
It's this
interesting.
black,
The black building. Yes.
glass-faced
Oh my gosh.
building.
That's actually where I started my
Yeah.
Expedia journey at. Oh, what?
See, small world. So we have
yeah.
worked in the same,
Yes.
actual same office
Actual
building.
same office. It's a good building. Good
Yeah.
location.
Yeah, when there was a common gripe that in our building that when we were in Bingo, the free banana stand was in Everest, the building next door. And then we moved to Everest and the banana stand moved to Bingo. So I was like, guys, we're all making good money at Amazon. Why are we worried about these free bananas? And then one day I saw one of the directors cribbing about the same banana. So I'm like, okay, if a director can crib about it, then I can also crib about it.
Those bananas are attractive. I have to say, like, I have walked past that banana cart and grabbed a banana. It's for everyone, right?
It
it's
is
not
for
just
everyone.
for employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. So what got you to move from India to this part of the world? And where did you land first?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. It was a difficult one, I want to say, the transition from India to the US. Mainly because, first of all, I had a happy life in India. I was actually happy and my career was good and I liked my job at Citi and I liked Bombay. But I had been dating my husband, Prashant, for how long was it back? Oh, it was like 7 years. And then we decided to get married. And he actually had already moved to the States. So he did his B school at Duke. And then he was about to graduate. And we decided that would be a good time to get married because I had finished my B school. I was already working. He had just graduated from B school. Or he was about to, I guess. And then I moved to Durham with him. North Carolina. Okay. Yes. Very different environment from Bombay, like polar opposite, I guess, it was an adjustment, I have to say. Also, I didn't know anyone besides him, whereas he was in his B school environment. Like, he had a lot of friends. His friends were lovely. They really welcomed me nicely. And we spent about 2 months, finished up his graduation and everything. And then he had got placed at Amazon. So he moved to Seattle and I moved with him. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a work permit back then.
Yeah.
So I spent a couple of months. We settled down in Seattle, set up the house. I remember a lot of like IKEA DIY furniture and all of that, like good fun stuff. It was also like, it was fun because we were living together for the first time after having been together for 7 years. So that was good. But I think I definitely needed to work. I think that's one thing I have recognized about myself, which is there's definitely a piece of my identity associated with working.
Yeah.
So I got a job which promised me with a start, like a beginning 1 year at India, and then they said they would transfer me back to Seattle. So I actually went and did that. It was at Infosys. And then 1.5 years later, it took a little bit longer than 1 year.
Then they can move you on a L1 visa?
I actually ended up getting the H4 EAD.
Yeah.
And that was faster than the L1 because the L1 would have taken another 2-3 months of processing.
I think my listeners know by now that most Indians are experts on immigration and visa categories and what visa means what. And actually, most people I talk to here, they don't know how big of a challenge it is and how much it breathes down your neck every day when you're on one of those temporary / lottery-based visas. So when you moved, maybe if you want to give me an example from Durham or from Seattle, was there anything you found very peculiar about the US? Like for me, it was the small talk because in India, you're not used to talking about the weather or how about the mariners, was there anything that you found weird that was a very kind of integral part of life here, which maybe now you got used to?
Similar to small talk, I think there are a lot of questions when you're trying to buy something. Like, in India, like you pick a product and you put it doand on the counter and you pay for it and you walk out. Whereas here, I think this is a running joke about coffee shops. I'll ask you, do you want a venti, grande or a tall? I don't even know what those sizes are. Or do you want milk, and then there was milk or almond milk, and then there was something that really caught my attention, and I was like, I can't believe this is a thing. She said, do you want wet foam or dry foam? I'm like, what is that? So I think that really was, not the coffee alone, but I was challenging. It's kind of similar to the small talk, as you said, because you're not familiar with a lot of these concepts. So you feel very put on the spot. Also, the accent's different and you're still getting used to it. You don't understand. They don't understand you. It's like...
Yeah, the amount of consumer choice in everything in the US is unbelievable. There's a whole aisle for yogurt. And this one time I was at a local Fred Meyer's here and it took me a good 10 minutes. And then I was like, do you have yogurt? Just yogurt. I don't want 2%. I don't want flavored. I don't want Greek. I don't want just yogurt. It's like, oh no, we're out of yogurt. I'm like, dude, come on. But yeah. Okay. And then you moved to Seattle eventually. And then what prompted the move to Vancouver?
Yeah, that was actually initially an undesired move because we had just bought a house in Seattle. And so we were going to be, well, not lifers, I would say, but we were going to stay in Seattle for a few years, because when you buy a house, you at least think of
5-10 years,
years at the minimum before you plan a move, I guess. But this was during COVID. My H4 EAD was about to lapse, and you're not allowed to apply for a renewal more than 6 months in advance.
Okay.
And for various reasons, they had also decoupled, like the administration back then had decoupled the renewals from the H1, like the primary applicant. So while the H1, my husband was able to apply for the H1 on premium processing. So he got it in 2 weeks. There was no premium processing for H4.
Yeah, just to pause here and give some context to our listeners, the H1 is a work visa used by a lot of tech workers. The H4 is what the dependent gets, and the EAD is basically an authorization to work on that visa. So some visas, the dependent can automatically work, like the L2, but for H4, the dependent needs a separate authorization. And so what Shruti is talking about is the renewal of that authorization to work while being a dependent of a tech worker on the H1 visa. So easy peasy.
Yes, and this was followed by maybe like 4 years of trying to get through the H1 lottery unsuccessfully. My company has generally been good about applying for the H1, but since it's a lottery system, it was just not in my favor. So the renewal was not going to come on time. It was already showing 8 to 10 months.
Wow.
And obviously I applied only 6 months in advance. And unfortunately, unlike the H1, where even if it lapses, you can still continue to work while you're waiting for your renewal, you can't do that on an H4 EAD. The day that it ends or expires is the day you cannot be employed legally anymore.
Yeah.
I was relatively in a good spot with my company in terms of like they wanted me to continue working. So I had a great boss. So I had two bosses. So my skip level as well as my boss, he and she were able to make a case to move me to a different location outside of the US. And I think I had some options back then. And I chose Vancouver because I was like, well, we've just bought a house and I like the Pacific Northwest and I don't want to move too far from here.
The beautiful part of the world.
Beautiful, yeah. I know people complain a lot about the rain. It doesn't bother me. But
summer makes up for it.
It does, right? The 3 most beautiful months. So that's how we moved to Vancouver. And Prashant and I got super lucky because we didn't have to change jobs. We both got transfers. The work permits came through pretty quickly. I was the primary work permit holder, and this time Prashant was the spouse, like the +1 on my Canada work permit. But then I think we've been good about supporting each other in our transitions because then he qualified for the PNP and got the PR in Canada, and that kind of helped expedite my PR in the process because we were tagged to each other's applications. But that's kind of how the Vancouver move happened. A lot of people ask me, what's the job market like in Canada and how is it different from the US? I don't know because I got a company transfer. I was in the same role doing the same thing, but I just got a location transferred to Canada.
When I moved to Canada, I was initially surprised at the makeup of the diaspora there. Because if you've lived in the US as an Indian person, you see mostly knowledge workers who are doing well, and the second generation is doing even better. But there, I saw a lot of blue collars in trucking and farming and quick service job. Yeah. So, but then I started noticing the trickle of people coming from the US. And back then, you would not see too many Indians in downtown, the tech worker types. But now I think that's really changed. And you have a lot of people coming in. So for me, there was one of the audience personas for Diasporaa, my new immigrant platform, is people who are moving from the US. They're not necessarily economic migrants because they were doing very well in the US, but they want to experience the Canadian life and not the struggling immigrant life, but the wealthy immigrant life, I guess, or the immigrant who has access to do whatever they want to do, but just don't know how to get started with other like-minded people. So I do see a lot of those people moving now. A quick question before we go into break. Has Vancouver grown on you, or do you still want to move back to Seattle at some point?
Well, it's interesting you ask. So we are actually trying to move back to Seattle because we now have a 2.5-year-old. We've always had a big dog. We are now bursting at the seams in our little downtown condo in Vancouver. It's been good to us. I have come to love Vancouver. And like I was telling you, I think I managed to find something to appreciate about every city. And Vancouver's been very good to us in many ways. We obviously had a daughter there. So I have special memories of Vancouver for various reasons, primarily because everything about my daughter happened there. But we are also looking forward to our move back to Seattle because it holds a special place in my heart. We've spent 4 to 6 years here between the two of us. So it's mixed feelings, I would call it. It's definitely bittersweet.
Yeah. With that, let's go into our next break. And when we come back, we'll talk more about your Vancouver experience and what advice you have for other new immigrants. We'll be back after these messages.
Talking about guns with others might not always feel comfortable, but it could save a life. Here's a way to start a conversation. Your family is going over to your neighbor's home for dinner for the first time. How would you ask if there are any unlocked guns in the home?
Hey,
We're so excited for tonight. Before we come over, though, may I ask if there are any unlocked guns in your home?
Our guns are stored securely, locked in a safe that the kids can't access.
Awesome.
Learn how to have the conversation at agreetoagree.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Find our app in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and take us with you wherever you go. Alternative Talk AM 1150.
Welcome back to Diasporaa on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from South Asia. We're talking to Shruti Khuntia, Director of Sales at Expedia, and a friend of mine from Vancouver. So let's talk about Vancouver versus Seattle. I have very established opinions on this, which my listeners have probably heard a few times by now, so I'll let you answer it. I mean, everybody knows that how similar these two cities are, but in what ways do you feel they're different?
I definitely felt a stronger sense of community and belonging in some strange ways in Vancouver, but it also could be because of the way. So one of the differences I've noticed in Seattle and in Vancouver, especially when it comes to the immigrant population, is in most US cities, you'll see like similar ethnicities of people. So for example, I might be like completely generalizing, but like Gujaratis are predominant in, say, X city.
New Jersey.
And
Yeah.
you said it, not me. No, I'm kidding. And then like Telugu people might be more predominant in, say, like Seattle has a pretty like heavy population. Vancouver that way is like a real melting pot of cultures. And I'm not even talking just Indians, but like even Asians, right? You have like different countries, like you'll see Chinese and Japanese and Korean and Vietnamese and Filipinos. And it's so diverse. So I think like what ends up happening in the city is no one feels truly alien. No one feels like out of place because we're all in this together and we're all trying to figure out life together in this big city. And so I think like we just felt very welcome and, you know, like it's a more easygoing city, I would say. Like, for example, just taking the example of traffic, because I've been driving since I moved to the US. You could make a mistake and halt traffic up in Vancouver and you wouldn't hear a beep. People would just wait.
Yeah.
And they will wait for you to figure it out. They're really nice. Whereas in Seattle, you'd get honked if you forgot to like press your
probably a Canadian thing as much as it is a Vancouver thing.
Possibly.
So, you know, there is a general perception about the Seattle freeze and about Vancouver also being very cliquey. Do you think you did anything different that led you to have this experience of people being warm and welcoming?
So I would say people are warm and welcoming when it comes to like regular like day-to-day life. I can't necessarily say we made extremely good friends for life, you know, in Vancouver. So that part which you said about finding Vancouver cliquey, as much as I hate to stereotype, I think I definitely felt it, which is it's difficult to break through friend circles that exist because I think that people that grew up in Vancouver already have their circles and they don't easily like allow.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I was in Bombay.
Yeah.
I've born and brought up there. I have a circle. I'm not going to go to someone and say, hey, new immigrant, would
you like to be my friend? Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think we realized that very early on, and we were lucky to get introduced to a group of friends who were all there since 25 years. And because one of them was, you know, close connection of ours, we kind of got into that group. And it was very refreshing because otherwise, as a new immigrant, you tend to meet other new immigrants. And then that shared experience becomes your dominant experience. Whereas for us, they were like how we were in India. So the topics being discussed were very different. And that I think really opened us up to opportunities and mindset as well.
Yeah.
And I always felt like as a new immigrant, the onus is on me to go out and make my knowing me worth something for that existing established person.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that really helped, and we did this pretty early on, thanks to Prashant. He was the one that Google searched and found Diasporaa, but it was your community that helped us out a lot. Because also, bear in mind that we moved peak COVID time, when there were lockdowns in place. I remember when we were trying to move to Vancouver, we had to lock down twice. It was 28 days of lockdown. It was absolutely like driving me nuts.
Yeah.
But there was no other way to make friends other than to actually like put yourself out there, like you said.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what we did. And so the friends that we've made now, and I would call some of them lifetime friends, is because we put ourselves out there and we actually like sought out a community for ourselves, because we literally landed there and we didn't know more than like one or two people in the city, which was a very uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
One that I had never experienced in my life before, because, as you're growing up and you're in B school or you're in college, like you make friends and you kind of grow up together, you have shared experiences.
Yeah.
So that was definitely the challenging part, I would say, of Vancouver.
When we went, we knew one person. He was the brother of a friend of Prachi, my wife. When we left, I would probably know close to 1,000 people. But that's also because I was the super connector in Diasporaa.
Yes.
And the whole point to start that was all these people had just moved during COVID and they were burning cash. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't get jobs. And in the US, most people come here to study. So they come into an ecosystem that they can plug into. So in Canada, same thing for students, same thing for, if you're from Punjab, you'll have lots and lots of, connections. But if you're an Indian who moved from another small town of India and have never lived abroad, or you're moving from the US like you did, it's much, much harder because you don't have that ecosystem to plug into. And that's what my goal was, to make Diasporaa that ecosystem.
Yeah.
Any particular experiences or events you remember that you enjoyed more than the others? Because I did about 150 events by the time I moved out.
I think we'd attended quite a few of them. I think one of my favorite events was the board game one that you hosted. Remember I think it was probably like a community building room that we had hired, and then lots of parallel board games.
So my friend Divya curated that event, who is your friend as well, and she was on this show a few weeks ago. She curated all the games. I gave her a brief of what I wanted, and we had this beautiful, I think, 42nd floor studio that one of our members kind of helped us get in his condo building. So that was definitely an interesting one. Nice views. We had pizza and whatnot.
Pizza, and like I think we all, like standing together and trying to strike up a conversation is much harder than when you, like I said, shared experiences, right? So like the act of playing a board game and really getting into it and getting competitive and enjoying that experience with each other really helped. Yeah. And then my other favorite one is when we all stuffed ourselves into, was it your apartment for the biryani night?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was the best biryani. And I remember we were all just crammed into your apartment.
Yeah. My wife always, when we were entertaining, she's like, 3 couples is a lot for this apartment. I think we should not invite more than that. And I'm like, you have no idea how many people I was having over when she would be in India.
She was in India,
Yeah, she was on, this was not during COVID. So we were not being super spreaders during COVID, but this was quite after that. Yeah, I would routinely have these events, and then there would be sort of like an after party at my house, because my son was not there, my wife was not there. I remember John Jacob drove all the way to Langley to get that biryani.
To get the biryani. I remember that. We were all in awe. But it was worth that drive, because I think everyone enjoyed that biryani.
Yeah. Coming from Bombay, I didn't appreciate the Indian food in Vancouver so much. But after living in Seattle, I really miss it. It's a much more robust scene for Indian. And I think the reason for that is because most of the Indian population here are employees. They do jobs, and their visas don't allow them to do businesses.
Correct.
But in Canada, so many people are on PRs and whatnot. So as like a drip down effect of that is that more people will be entrepreneurs and have more restaurants.
No, definitely. But the Seattle scene is improving, I think, in terms of Indian food. Like the few times that I visited, like this is actually a work trip for me.
Yeah.
And I've eaten some really yummy food here. It's definitely getting better. I don't know if it'll ever be at the Vancouver standards for Indian food, because I know Seattle's good for many cuisines.
And Punjabis are known for making good food.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Do you have a favorite Indian restaurant in Vancouver?
That's a tough one. I like so many of them, but it's going to be a cliched answer. I like Tasty Indian Bistro.
Yeah, the Yale Town one.
Because it's close by, but I know that they say the Sari one is even better. Yeah. And then there's actually a new restaurant called Hatu Pasta that has opened up, and it's right next to, I don't know if they have different branches, but that's a really good one. They make really good parathas, humongous parathas.
Yeah, once I had gone biking, and then I was meeting a friend at the Tasty Indian Bistro in Yale Town for dinner. and I had my biking helmet on, and it was fall, so I had like this like sweatshirt on, and I walked up to ask for a table, and the lady goes, "Uber pickups over there."
Oh
So
my
she thought I was a
gosh.
Uber Eats, pickup.
That's not nice.
So I just kind of laughed. I didn't get offended because you see a lot of Indian people riding around those electric bikes and delivering food. So I told her, no, I'm here for I want a table. I want to eat here. And she went red in the face.
Oh
She
my
was so
goodness.
apologetic. So
I
it
can
was a
imagine.
genuine mistake, right? I don't think she was being racist at all.
A life lesson was learned that
And-
day, I think.
And hey, I got free gulab jamun out of it.
Oh, good.
So,
Yeah, well, something good came out of it. Good.
yeah, something good came out of it. Now, when you moved to Vancouver and you've been in downtown, most people who move go to Surrey because that's where the Indian population is. So was that a conscious move to be in downtown?
Yeah, this is one thing that Prashant and I think we have some shared rules in life that we live by, which is never live more than 30 minutes of a commute away from work.
Sure.
And even though we moved peak COVID, there was always that chance that one day we would go back to work. And that indeed has happened today. He works for Amazon and I work for Expedia, and we both have returned to office. So both our offices are in downtown. The second rule that we have is whenever we move to a new city together, we want to experience the city.
Sure.
We want to get to know what the city is about, like what. And typically, I'm not saying this is true for all cities,
Yeah.
but the cultural hub is usually like downtown. That's
Sure.
where all the action is, and that's where all the restaurants and like events and things like that are. So that's actually what drove us to downtown. And yeah, that's what we did in Seattle as well, actually. So when we moved to Seattle, we were initially in Belltown, which is the happening part of the city, or hopefully it still is, because I did like my time at Belltown. But similarly, that's the reason why we moved to Yaletown in Vancouver. And we're still there because we love it. It's a really nice place to be.
Yeah. I always feel that your assimilation will get accelerated if you have easy access to people and events and things that are happening. So versus thinking my budget is $1,000 and therefore I have to stay in Surrey, I would think, well, it costs $1,200 to live in downtown. Maybe not anymore. So how do I make sure I earn that extra $200 and make this happen, because the benefits far outweigh the additional cost?
Yeah.
And I've seen almost identical couples move around the same time from the same place. One goes to Surrey, one goes to downtown, and their journeys are very different and their chances of success are very different. And how much they assimilate and fall in love with the place is also very different. Do you get to do a lot of outdoorsy stuff in Vancouver, at least before you had your daughter?
Yeah, we've been outdoorsy. I think that's one of the things we love about living in the Pacific Northwest, which is we've always done hikes. We've actually done some intense hikes in the Mount Baker region, and that was when we lived in Seattle. We haven't hiked as much in Vancouver, but we've definitely been around, because I think the beauty of Vancouver is you have so many like beautiful natural things to do. It doesn't have to be a hike. Like you could go up a mountain.
They're right there.
They're right there.
Everything's
They're
right
just
there.
in the city. We live by Falls Creek. We're very fortunate to be able to live there. And so like the Pacific Ocean's right there, like in front of our window.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we've done things like we went paddleboarding on Falls Creek, and we've done some hikes before we had Nia.
Yeah.
And so, for example, like we've gone around Bunsen Lake.
Yeah.
And then we've also like not hiking, but like we drove up Grouse Mountain.
Yeah. So one of my previous guests, Juhi, she did the grouse grind when she was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And then she said this was so she went and did another hike on the same day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's intense.
And here I am getting overtaken by grandmas while trying to climb the grouse grind. So
the grouse grinder is a real, there are some really competitive people out there. So it humbles you in many ways.
Yeah, I mentioned this in a previous episode. The grandma overtook me twice.
Oh my gosh.
So she went up and then went down on the gondola and then went back up again while I was still panting my way through.
Oh my gosh.
Vancouver does have a different level of fit people.
It does.
And Seattle's still, quite fit that way. But when I travel to places like, Tennessee or Ohio, I used to go for work. You really see the difference in the activity level of people.
West Coast in general, I think, is really into fitness. Yeah, I mean, I think like Seattle definitely like
Yeah.
very outdoorsy. There's a running joke that in the Pacific Northwest, like everyone's in athleisure clothes all the time, ready to break into a hike any second. Like, you want to go on a hike? Sure, I'm ready. But that's the thing that we, I think, loved about this entire region, which is there's just so many outdoorsy things. And I've been brought up mainly in like busy, crowded cities, not too many like natural things to do, nature related things to do, I guess. So for me, this was a big change from where I grew up. And so I've taken to it very quickly. And that's why I think the weather doesn't bother me so much, because there's just so much to do. Like, you don't have to rely on events and activities.
So Prachi was in a very similar position as you, loving her life in India, no real need to move out, good career. She was due for a promotion. And then I kind of pretty much dragged her to Canada. And I think she took some time to, like, because for her, Vancouver is very, very slow paced. And for me, I was actually enjoying that. And to your commute point, I did a total commute of 3.5 hours every day in Bombay, from South Bombay to Andheri. And I wanted no commute, and I wanted to live where, all the action is and probably where my job would be. It's a different story. I ended up launching warehouses for Amazon. So I would go out to the outskirts every day for where the warehouse sites were. But again, I didn't mind it because commuting here is not as stressful as it is in India, with the horns and the traffic and whatnot. So
it's the local trains.
I did my fair share in the local trains, and no, I do not miss them. Let's go into our weekly segment now. Let's spin the wheel and see what we land on. So this one is called Mango Memories. Most people from the subcontinent have fond memories of eating mangoes when they were growing up. Do you have any mango memories?
Yes, I have a fond memory of mangoes because my grandpa, actually, he was also in the civil services, but he was a forest officer. And so he was really into botany, naturally, because he was a forest officer. And so he had actually created a hybrid mango plant and planted it right in our yard, in our Bhubaneswar. Like, that was my grandparents' house. And I've seen that tree basically grow from a little sapling to a full-fledged tree that bears mangoes every other year. Is that how? Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I remember those were the tastiest mangoes because he would take such good care of them. He would cover them in like plastic and paper so that the birds don't pick on them.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing.
Then he would pluck them when they were a little bit younger, and then like cover them in like chuna, like the, I don't even know what the chemical name is, but it's basically like calcium something.
Limestone?
Yeah, I guess that would be the... Yeah, so he would do all kinds of things. Like, the process that those mangoes and the care that those mangoes went through were immense. And then he would put them in these large tokeries and put them under the bed, and then they would ripen, and one by one he would come and cut them. And it was special, I think, because they were created with love and right from the start.
Do you know what strains he mixed to get that?
I wish I remembered, because my grandpa, unfortunately, he's passed away now. And that tree exists. So I'm sure if I call my uncle or my nanny, she will know.
I've never seen anyone invent their own strain.
Yeah, so exactly. I think that was like, he's obviously like a man of science, and he experimented with those mangoes, and it was successful, because now we're all still like reaping the fruits of his labor, quite literally, pun intended, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, that's all the time we have for today. So it brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to Diasporaa. We hope you enjoyed hearing Shruti's interesting story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics discussed in today's episode. You can find Diasporaa on all major podcast platforms and can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you like this episode, consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review. Diasporaa is part of the Staying Power network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. And Shruti, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Aditya. This was a lot of fun.